The story started with a shocking twist that nobody saw coming. T and Tiny, once celebrated for winning a massive $71 million lawsuit against a billion-dollar toy company, suddenly found themselves back in court, their victories slipping through their fingers. You won't believe how quickly everything turned upside down. One moment, it looked like justice had been served, and the next their case was thrown into chaos. Destiny took an unexpected turn, leaving fans stunned and questioning what really went on behind closed doors in that courtroom. Was justice truly served, or were the OMG Girls robbed of their legacy all over again? This case was no longer just about money. It became a battle over ownership, identity, and respect. And that's what made this story different. To understand how this legal storm began, we had to go back to the roots of this controversy. The OMG Girls were not just any girl group. They were a cultural movement. Tiny Harris formed the group in 2009, and from the very beginning they stood out with their bright, colorful hairstyles, glittery outfits, and unapologetic confidence. They became icons for a generation of young black girls who rarely saw themselves represented in mainstream music and media. The OMG Girls weren't simply performing songs. They were setting trends, shaping a new wave of style that mixed hip-hop energy with a bold, glamorous edge. Their fans connected with them deeply, seeing reflections of their own culture and identity in their music and their fashion. Even after the group disbanded in 2015, their influence did not fade. Their look, their style, and their attitude continued to inspire young fans, and their legacy stayed alive through the trends they had created. But here's where it gets interesting. In 2008, MGA Entertainment, the company behind the world-famous LOL Surprise brand, launched a new doll line called OMG Dolls. The dolls immediately caught attention, but not only for their popularity. Fans began to notice a strange familiarity. The bold wigs, check. The edgy urban fashion, check. The colorful looks and sassy personalities, check and check again. Suddenly, social media was buzzing with side-by-side comparisons of the OMG Dolls and the OMG Girls. The resemblance was shocking. Fans started asking serious questions. Was this a coincidence, or had MGA simply taken inspiration from the OMG Girls image and turned it into a billion-dollar product? Let me tell you, this was the moment everything exploded. T and Tiny saw what was happening and knew this wasn't just about dolls. It was about their group's image being used without permission, without credit, and without compensation. They decided to take action, filing a lawsuit against MGA Entertainment. At first, people thought this would be just another celebrity versus corporation story, but it quickly became clear that it was something much bigger. This was about cultural ownership. It was about a black creative group standing up to a giant company and saying, "Yeah, you cannot profit off our culture and erase our names." The case started to gain attention from the press, with fans passionately supporting T Tiny and the OMG Girls. Social media erupted with discussions about representation and creative theft. And for a moment, it felt like the couple might actually take down one of the biggest toy brands in the world. But here's the shocking part. When the case first went to trial, it looked like the OMG Girls had won. T.I. and Tiny's legal team presented powerful evidence. Side-by-side images of the OMG Girls and MGA's dolls. The similarities were undeniable. Every detail from the hairstyles to the clothing choices was nearly identical. Fans watching the trial online couldn't believe what they were seeing. For many, this wasn't just proof of inspiration. It looked like straight-up copying. When the jury came back with their decision in January 2024, it felt like history had been made. They awarded T and Tiny a staggering $71 million in damages. The courtroom buzz was shocked. The toy industry was shaken, and the couple's victory became a trending topic. Supporters celebrated this as a major win for black creators everywhere, believing it would set a precedent for protecting cultural identity. But Destiny was not finished twisting the story, and the craziest part was still to come. Just when it seemed like T and Tiny had finally gotten justice, everything flipped upside down. A few months after their big win, Judge James Selna, who had overseen the trial, made a shocking ruling. He reviewed the evidence presented during the trial and decided that the proof wasn't strong enough to show that MGA had acted with deliberate intent. That meant in the judge's eyes there wasn't enough to prove that MGA had maliciously copied the OMG Girls style on purpose. In one devastating decision, The original $71 million verdict was slashed down to $17.9 million. In the most controversial part of the jury's ruling, the punitive damages was thrown out completely. The couple's courtroom victory, which had felt like a historic moment, was suddenly crumbling. Fans were stunned, and T and Tiny were left to prepare for a retrial that would decide if they would get anything more at all. The reversal left a bitter taste in the mouths of supporters. People couldn't understand how a jury had seen enough evidence to deliver such a massive verdict, yet the judge could step in and strip it away. The craziest part was that while the court admitted MGA's team was aware of the OMG Girls during the doll development process, the judge claimed that knowing about the group wasn't the same as intentionally stealing their image. This decision created a wave of outrage online. Social media users accused the legal system of failing Black creators yet again, saying that even with fame and resources, T.I. and Tiny were being forced to fight an uphill battle. The story was no longer just a legal drama. It had turned into a conversation about cultural exploitation and systemic inequality. But this is where it gets interesting. The judge's decision didn't just cut down the damages, it also sparked questions about what evidence was kept from the jury. According to sources close to the case, several key pieces of communication from MGA's internal team were never presented in court. Emails and design drafts that directly referenced the OMG Girls were reportedly kept out because the judge believed they could overly sway the jury without directly proving intent. Critics called this a huge blow to T.I. and Tiny's case because to them, those messages showed that MGA knew exactly what they were doing. Even worse, the jury didn't get to see the toy company's history of cultural controversy. This wasn't the first time MGA had been accused of profiting from Black culture without crediting or paying the original creators, but none of that was allowed to be discussed in the trial. Fans were furious when they learned about one particular line from an MGA designer that never reached the jury. In a message they had allegedly written, "Let's make it edgy like OMG Girls, but without the drama." That one sentence could have changed everything, but it was never shown during the trial. People started asking themselves, if this level of evidence wasn't enough, what would it take for creators to prove their work was stolen? T.I. and Tiny's legal team was determined to fight back, but the weight of the toy company's power and resources loomed large. MGA was worth billions with lawyers and connections that could drag this case out for years. The tension around the case grew even higher when journalists and commentators began digging deeper into MGA's practices. Conversations started about how corporations often took elements of Black culture, music, fashion, language, and packaged them for mainstream audiences without credit or financial recognition for the communities that created them. The OMG Dolls case became a symbol of that problem. This wasn't just about a lawsuit anymore. It was about who gets to own and profit from culture. T and Tiny, once confident that their fight would be a landmark victory, now had to prepare for a retrial that could take everything away. The stakes were higher than ever, and what started as a straightforward lawsuit had turned into a battle that the entire entertainment and fashion world was watching closely. As the dust settled from the shocking reversal, whispers about hidden evidence and behind-the-scenes drama only grew louder. This was no longer just a case about dolls and damages. It had become a cultural storm. Fans and insiders began sharing details about emails, sketches, and even text messages that allegedly linked MGA's creative team directly to the OMG Girls. Some of these communications reportedly showed designers openly discussing urban fashion trends, hip-hop aesthetics, and styles inspired by young Black girls. Yet, none of it had been presented to the jury. Critics claim this was a deliberate attempt to protect MGA, arguing that these messages could have completely shifted the outcome of the trial. For supporters of T.I. and Tiny, this wasn't just disappointing, and it was proof that the legal system often favored corporations over creators. But here's where it gets interesting. The more people learned about the trial, the angrier they became. Social media lit up with hashtags like Pay Black Creators and Justice for OMG Girls. While major influencers and celebrities began weighing in on the case, panels on entertainment outlets and talk shows debated whether this was a classic example of cultural appropriation where companies profited from Black culture while pushing aside the people who built it. Some even accused MGA of intentionally targeting urban culture to make their dolls seem edgy and trendy while stripping away its roots and authenticity. For many fans, this wasn't just about T.I., Tiny, or the OMG Girls. It was about a long history of exploitation that Black artists had faced in fashion, music, and now toys. The controversy reached a boiling point when more information about MGA's past resurfaced. This wasn't the first time the company had been accused of borrowing heavily from Black culture without proper credit. Stories about previous toy lines and campaigns began to surface, painting MGA as a company that had built an empire on inspiration from communities they never acknowledged. And yet in court, none of this history mattered. Judge Selna had limited the evidence that could be shown, focusing only on whether MGA had willfully copied the OMG Girls. For fans, this felt like a huge injustice. How could the bigger picture of cultural theft be ignored? How could a case this significant be reduced to such narrow terms? The craziest part was how deeply personal this became for the fans of the OMG Girls. For them, this wasn't about two celebrities fighting a company. It was about representation. The OMG Girls weren't just a pop group. They were role models who gave a voice and a face to young Black girls in an industry where they were often invisible. Seeing their style replicated on store shelves, sold in massive retailers without a single nod to their contribution, felt like a slap in the face. The dolls might have been a commercial success, but for many, they symbolized how easily Black creativity